So, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about this dude right here, Jason Voorhees. Now, the first movie aired May 9th, 1980. This movie made the box office was $59.8 million. The budget was $550,000. It's only 95 minutes. This movie is one of my favorite movies. Like I said, it came out in the 80s. Basically, what it was is Friday the 13th is a 1980s American slasher film produced and directed by Sean S. Cunningham and written by Victor Miller. It stars Bestie Palmer, Angelina King, Harry Cosby, Laurie Gartman, Kevin Bacon, Jenning Taylor, and a bunch of other things. There was a lot of movies. Inside there is a couple films. I don't know how many films, but the plot was in the summer of 1958 at Camp Crystal Lake, two counselors named Barry and Clodity sneaked away from a campfire into a storage barn. They prepared to have sex before an unseen assailant enters and murders them. 21 years later, on June 13, 1979, newly hired camp counselor Annie Phillips asks for directions to respond to Camp Crystal Lake. An elderly man named Crazy Ralph warns her against going, claiming that the camp has a death curse. A friendly truck driver named Ennis agrees to give Annie a lift. Halfway to the camp during the drive, Ennis warns Annie about the camp, informing her that a young boy drowned at Crystal Lake in 1957, and about the two murders of the following year. After Ennis dropped her off, Annie hitches another ride from an unseen assailant who chases her into the woods and slashes her throat. At the camp, counselors Ned, Jack, Bill, Marcy, Brenda, and Alice, along with the owner Steve Chrisley, refurbish the cabins and facilities. As a thunderstorm approaches, Steve leads the campground to stock supplies. Meanwhile, the killer arrives at the camp and stalks the counselors. Ned sees someone walk into one of the cabins and follows, only to be killed off screen. Later, while Jack and Marcy have sex in one of the cabin's bunk beds, they are unaware of Ned's body directly above them, with his throat slit. With Marcy leaves to use the camp bathrooms, Jack's throat is pierced with an arrow from beneath the bed. The killer then follows Marcy to the bathrooms and slams an axe into her face. Meanwhile, Brenda hears a child voice calling for help and ventures outside her cabin to archery range, only for the range lights to turn on as she is attacked off screen. Steve later returns to the camp and is confronted by an unseen killer who stabs him. Elise and Billy are worried by their friend's disappearance and they leave the main cabin to investigate. They discover a bloody axe in Brenda's bed. The phone's disconnected and the car's impreparable. When the power goes out, Bill goes to check the generator and is murdered by the killer. Elise then heads out to look for them. Upon finding Bill's body impaled with arrows to the generator's room, she flees to the main cabin to hide, only to be traumatized further when Brenda's body is thrown through the window. Alice sees a vehicle pull up and rushes outside, thinking it's Steve. Instead, she is greeted by a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Voorhees, who claims to be an old friend of Steve's. As Elise brings her inside, Mrs. Voorhees began to reminisce that her son, Jason, was the young boy who drowned in 1957. She blames his death on the counselors, who was supposed to be watching him, but they instead were having sex and not paying attention to Jason's drowning. Revealing himself as the killer, Mrs. Voorhees turns violent and rushes towards Alice or Elise, I don't know which one it is, with a bow knife. Attempting to kill her in a assuming chase, Alice, or Elise, finds Annie's body inside Mrs. Voorhees' car and Steve's body hanging from a tree. Following confrontation in which Mrs. Voorhees is knocked out, Alice escapes, or Alice escapes to the shore. Just as she begins to relax, Mrs. Voorhees finds her and attempts to kill her again with a machete. During the final struggle, Alice, or Elise, immediately decapitates Mrs. Voorhees with her machete. Afterwards, a traumatized Alice boards and falls asleep inside a canoe, which floats out on Crystal Lake. Just as Alice awakens, sees the police arriving, Jason's decomposing body suddenly emerges from the lake and drags her underwater. She then awakens in a hospital with a police officer and a medical staff tend to her. When Alice, or Elise, asks about Jason, the officer says that there was no sign of any boy. Elise says then he's still there. As the lake is shown with a single ripple of open water. The cast are Betty Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees, Andrew King as Alice Hardy, Harry Cosby III as Bill Brown, Jenny Taylor as Marcy Something Cunningham, Lori Bantram as Brenda Jones, Kevin Bacon as Jack Brill, Mark Nelson as Ned Robinson, Robbie Morgan as Andy Phillip, Peter Brewer as Steve Christley, Rex Ephart as Nos Wade Gorney as Crazy Ralph, Willie Adams as Barry Jackson, Deborah S. Hayes as Claudia Hayes, Ray Lanham as Jason Voorhees. That is all about Friday the 13th. I will be doing Friday the 13th part 2 tomorrow, but I will still have the same, I won't be using the same footage. I'll have different footage tomorrow, but yes, this is Friday the 13th. I am going to start a new series plus an Outlast series. So I'm going to have my Outlast series and I'm going to have this series going along where I do and talk about the movies. If you like this video, please press that like button. Please press the sub button and I will really appreciate it. Like and subscribe and I will see you in the next video tomorrow. Peace.
Fuck you, Jason!